All right, listener, buckle up, because today we are diving into some pretty mind-blowing stuff. We're talking about Elon Musk, right? But hold on, not Teslas, not SpaceX. This time it's all about AI.
Yeah, AI is kind of his thing, isn't it?
It really is. And what makes this deep dive even more fascinating is we're unpacking a conversation between Musk and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
At an AI safety summit, no less,
Oh yeah, the stakes are high on this one.
for sure. And what I find so interesting about this whole conversation is that it really captures this pivotal moment for Musk. Like he's spent the past decade sounding the alarm on AI, right?
Yeah.
Basically saying, hey guys, this is serious stuff. We got to be careful here.
And for a while there, it seemed like a lot of people were brushing him off, like, yeah, yeah, Elon, whatever you say.
Right. Like, let us know when the robots start taking over.
Yeah.
But then 2023 happened.
Boom. Things changed fast.
It was like the whole world woke up one morning and AI was suddenly everywhere.
Deep fakes.
ChatGPT.
It was like everyone went from what's AI to, oh my God, AI is everywhere, practically overnight.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
suddenly, everyone's taking Musk a lot more seriously. Like,
Uh,
okay, maybe he's not so crazy after all.
And that shift is so palpable in this conversation, right? It's less about convincing people that AI is important and more about, okay, now that we all agree this is a big deal, what the heck are we going to do about it?
Exactly. And that's where Musk throws us a real curveball, especially if you think of him as like this anti-regulation kind of guy. He actually makes a case for regulation, but he does it in this really interesting way by comparing it to a sports game.
Yeah, the sports analogy, I have to admit, when I first heard that, I was like, where's
Yeah.
he going with this?
Right. But it's actually pretty brilliant when you think about it. So Musk argues that any sport, to function properly and safely, needs a referee, right? Someone to enforce the rules, make sure everyone's playing fair, that kind of thing. And he points out that he's no stranger to regulations, the aerospace industry, automotive industry. These are heavily regulated spaces, and he's built his entire career navigating them.
Yeah, and he even goes as far as saying he agrees with something like 99% of regulations out there.
I know. Talk about shattering that most Kate's rules image.
Right. So it's not that he's against regulation entirely. It's more about finding that balance between fostering innovation and, like you said, making sure there's a referee on the field to keep things from going off the rails.
Exactly. And, he even kind of hints that maybe some of the other tech leaders who are hesitant about AI regulation, maybe they just don't have the same level of experience dealing with it effectively.
Yeah. They haven't had to wrangle rockets and self-driving cars through a million hoops.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But then, just when you think he's made his point, he kind of throws another log on the fire, so to
Yeah.
speak, by bringing up China.
Yes, the China factor. This was a really controversial move on Musk's part, inviting China to this AI safety summit.
Yeah, it sparked a ton of debate.
Because there are a lot of people, especially here in the West, who are very wary of China's intentions when it comes to AI.
And, there's this common argument, right, that if we try to put any kind of guardrails on AI development here in the West, that China will just speed ahead and leave us in the dust.
It's a real concern, and it kind of feeds into this AI arms race narrative that we hear so much about.
Right. But Musk basically says, hold on, not so fast.
Yeah.
He flat out says that China is willing to have these conversations, and in fact, he calls their involvement essential.
Which is not something you hear every day, let me tell you.
No, not at all.
Mhm.
And it really makes you think about the global dynamics at play here, right? Because if we're going to address the challenges and opportunities of AI in a meaningful way, it can't just be one country or even a group of countries calling the shots. It has to be a global effort.
It has to be everyone at the table.
Exactly. But then, just when you think the conversation couldn't get any more complex, it takes another sharp turn, and we dive headfirst into the whole open source debate. And this is where we see some real evolution in Musk's own thinking. Yeah, so he's talking about how AI could potentially take over a huge chunk of jobs, right? Like maybe even most jobs. And you think, okay, mass unemployment, societal collapse, here we go. But Musk, he's like, hold on a second. This could actually be a good thing. This could be how we get to a universal basic income society.
Okay, so instead of robots taking our jobs, they're bankrolling everyone's early retirement. I'm listening, but how does that actually work in real life?
So in Musk's view, as AI starts handling more and more tasks, it leads to this like explosion in productivity and abundance. Like we're not just talking about making widgets faster and cheaper. It's like a fundamental shift in what's possible, right? And with that shift, all that wealth that's being generated, well, could be distributed to everyone, providing a safety net in a world where like the traditional 9-to-5 job might not even exist anymore.
Whoa, okay. That is mind-blowing when you really let it sink in. But doesn't that raise a whole other question of, like, if AI can handle everything from making my coffee to performing brain surgery, what's left for us humans to DO all day?
Right. It's the ultimate what's the point of it all question. And it's actually something that Musk himself admits to struggling with. Like he talks about how he'll be working on something and catch himself thinking, what's the point of all this effort if some AI could just do it all and probably better?
It's like he's having an existential crisis on behalf of all humanity.
Totally. But it also highlights this potentially massive psychological shift that AI could bring about, Because if we're used to defining ourselves by our work, by our productivity, what happens when that work is no longer necessary? Who are we then?
Big questions.
Huge. And it's why Musk believes we need to start rethinking, like at a fundamental level, how we find meaning and purpose in a world where work might look radically different. He even throws out some other options, like focusing on education, pursuing creative passions.
Becoming professional esports
Yeah.
athletes?
Hey, why not, right? It's about finding new avenues for challenge and fulfillment when the old ones might not be there anymore.
So instead of competing for jobs, we might all be competing in the AI Olympics. Sign me up.
Right. It's a trip. But really, it underscores how AI has the potential to reshape not just our economy, but our entire way of life.
Right.
Like we're talking about a paradigm shift. And the crazy thing is, nobody, not even Elon Musk, knows exactly what's on the other side of that shift.
It's equal parts exciting and terrifying, to be honest.
Totally. But there is one thing that Musk seems certain about, and that's that we need to proceed with caution. Because as amazing as AI could be...
It's not without its risks.
Exactly. And that brings us back to those unexpected topics we touched on earlier, AI companionship and that whole off-switch thing with robots.
Yeah, those definitely threw me for a loop. Like, I have to admit, when I hear AI companion, my mind goes straight to those kind of creepy robot dolls from sci-fi movies. Not exactly my idea of a good time.
Right. Definitely not a great wingman. But Musk's whole take on AI companionship is rooted in something really real, really human: loneliness.
And he even talked about how this is something he's seen firsthand with his own son, right?
Yeah, he shared that story about one of his sons having difficulty making friends, and it was clear how much that weighs on him as a father.
Mm.
And it really adds this whole other layer to the conversation, right? Like,
Yeah.
this isn't just some abstract concept from us, this is personal.
It really humanizes the whole conversation, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
And it also makes you think about all those people out there, young and old, who feel isolated, lonely. What if AI could help bridge that gap? Like, what if it could provide a sense of connection, of companionship, that maybe those folks are having trouble finding elsewhere?
So instead of replacing human connection, it could actually enhance it or provide a support system for people who, for whatever reason, struggle with those traditional social bonds. That's actually really powerful when you think about it that way.
It really is. And it gets to a crucial point that sometimes gets lost in all the hype around AI, which is that AI is a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
It's all in how we wield it.
Exactly. And Musk makes that point over and over again in this conversation. It's on us, on humanity, to guide its development and make sure it's used in ways that benefit us all.
Right. So it's not about whether AI is good or bad inherently. It's about making conscious choices about how we want to integrate it into our lives and into society as a whole.
Exactly. And that circles back to that whole ethical considerations thing we were talking about earlier. It's not just about what we can do with AI. It's about what we should do. What kind of future do we want to create?
Not a question with an easy answer, that's for sure. Okay, so we're back to AI companions. And I gotta say, this whole thing still feels kind of like, I don't know, straight out of a movie, right? Like, you have this potential for this really incredible support and connection, but then there's that other part of your brain that's like, wait a minute, what about all those sci-fi movies where the robots turn on us?
Yeah, it definitely messes with your head a little bit. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
We're hardwired to connect with other people. So the idea of like forming meaningful bonds with artificial intelligence, it's just weird.
Yeah, it's like, where do we draw that line between genuine companionship and just really, really advanced technology?
Right. That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And something even Musk is wrestling with. But what's interesting is that he actually sees this whole like blurring of the lines as a potentially positive thing, especially for people who, for whatever reason, have a hard time with those traditional social interactions.
And he brought up his son as an example, right?
Right.
Talking about the challenges his son has with making friends.
Yeah, and you could just hear the emotion in his voice when he talked about that.
Yeah.
It really drove home that for Musk, this isn't just some abstract theoretical debate. This is about real people, real relationships, and the very real challenges people face.
Yeah, and it kind of reframes the whole AI companion thing, right? Like instead of viewing it as this weird replacement for human connection, maybe it's more about expanding our definition of what companionship can look like.
Totally. Like, what if AI could actually help bridge that gap for people who feel isolated, who feel lonely? What if instead of replacing human connection, it could actually enhance it or provide support for people who, for whatever reason, just aren't finding that connection in those more traditional ways?
It's a fascinating idea when you think about it that way. And it brings us back to that core idea that AI, at its heart, is a tool. It's not inherently good or evil. It's all about how we choose to use it.
Exactly. It's like any other powerful tool, right?
Yeah.
It can be used to build amazing things or it can be misused. And Musk really emphasizes that throughout this whole conversation. He's not just like geeking out about the technology here. He's really urging us to think about the moral implications, the ethical considerations, the potential consequences.
It's like he's saying, okay, we can probably create an AI that can do pretty much anything we can imagine, but should we?
Right, and that's the big question, because with great power comes great responsibility, and that's never been truer than it is now in this age of AI where things are moving so fast.
So as we kind of bring this deep dive to a close here, what's the biggest takeaway you hope our listeners are left with?
I think for me, more than anything, it's about the importance of staying informed, of staying engaged, and most importantly, staying curious. The future of AI isn't something that's going to be decided for us. It's something we're all actively shaping right now. Through the choices we make, the conversations we have, it all matters.
Musk even kind of leaves us with a little homework assignment at the end there, right? He
Yeah.
throws out that big question of if AI really is this next great equalizer, this force that could fundamentally reshape our world, what are we doing to prepare for it?
It's a question worth thinking about because the future's not set in stone, right? It's up to us to decide what kind of future we want to create.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those big questions. This has been a deep dive into the mind of Elon Musk, AI, and the future we're building together. Until next time, stay curious.